There's so many things that you think of when you start trying to narrow it down. The biggest one I guess I would share is that at some point as a leader, what I think our people are ultimately longing for from us is access to our own hearts, our own stories, our own journeys. Um, to ask the question, like, does this thing really work, and does it work in you, and are you really being honest with us? And it's the thing that I think about courage when I think of leadership from that angle, and it's not the kind of courage that I think I initially embraced when we planted the church and moved here and kind of let's take the hill, let's have this kind of courage. It's a courage of vulnerability. It's a courage of humility. It's a courage that says, I need the gospel as much as you need the gospel. And I guess when I think of leading from that place, it's really asking me, do I have a faith journey currently taking place in my life that's worth talking about, that's worth sharing about? One of the most scary things for me of the last few months was just this real sense that God was telling me to share with the congregation about my weight. And as we were preaching through 1 Corinthians, and I was talking about hope, the place that I run to when hope is missing for me is I run to food. I want control, I want comfort, I do whatever it is that I do, but that's where I go. That's my sin. I reject God and I run to food to comfort me. And I remember the night before God's asking me to share that, just thinking to myself of 100 reasons why I shouldn't let people in there. That they won't believe the gospel's real, I'll come off as a fraud, blah, 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 blah. And it just keeps going, these things in my head. And undeniably, every time that I think I've allowed or had the courage to open up my own journey before my people, it has this incredible impact, not because of me, but because of the honesty, I guess, that they have hope for their own life. They confess their own sin. They come to communion that week with a totally different vibe because they know you're in it with them, I guess, and it's not too good to be true. It's just real and raw and honest and painful, and yet really hopeful because the redemption's real. And even in sharing this with 2,000 other leaders, I'm thinking to myself, dude, I do not want to share this. But I know you have the same stuff going on, and it might not be food, but you have arrogance or pride or anger or whatever your thing is, and it would probably scare you to death to be honest with your congregation about your own journey into the gospel. As a leader, I think ultimately what I want to proclaim is that Jesus is my hope, that this God who was crucified and buried and resurrected and now reigns in this present reality of as the King, still has the power to transform me, and that wasn't a one-time moment, but it's this ongoing process where he's peeling back the layers of my life and my heart, and he keeps healing and convicting and rebuking and transforming me in these deep ways as a child of God, as a husband, as a father, as a pastor. And I do not have it figured out, but I'm on this journey with them. And for whatever reason, the ability to sit next to them in the pew and agree that I need Christ more than they do or as much as they do has power from a leadership stance that I didn't expect. I mean, I actually told him that Sunday when I talked about my weight that what really bugs me is that the sin that I struggle with isn't one I can hide. If I was into porn, if I struggled with anger or some other thing, if that was my big deal, then I could sort of cover it up, and in this sick way, I would feel better about myself before them, before you. But here I am. I can't cover it up. It's just this is pretty obvious, and God's working on me, and I believe transformation is happening or is coming. But at the end of the day, my hope isn't that I'm going to get my life figured out. My hope is that Christ is in me, and continues to pour His love out and create that hope and redeems the whole of me. Not just a salvation that I die, I get to go to heaven, but it's much bigger than that. It's a reworking of my entire being and personhood, and that's an ugly, messy process. And it's a process that I would hope you're into, that you'd be taking the gospel seriously. And when you're not taking it seriously, you'd be honest about that. There's something about the courage as a leader to be honest with their own faith that I think has a power to it that is lacking in the church in the West. The motto is sort of, can we live before the face of God before them? And sad to say that I think there is this twistedness in my own heart that would rather give glory to myself than to God. And so I don't want to share about my weaknesses because I just want to get them all put together and act like, wow, this is a guy that really has his life together. That seems much more comfortable to me as a leader than having to stand up and go, I could not get a handle on that. But by the grace of God, and through the power of the cross and resurrection, God changed me. I'm cool with having those people in my church that tell that story. I just don't want to be the one telling that story. And that's twisted and that's sick. And I'm rejoiced that as the years have gone by and as God has continued to grow and change me, that I find it a lot less vulnerable or scary, perhaps, to be able to point to an area in my marriage or my own personal life and say, but by the grace of God, that would never have been transformed. I think that as leaders, before we were called to be pastors, before we were preachers and teachers and missionaries and all these things, we were called to be loved by God, to be adopted as His child, to be forgiven of our sin. And if we lose sight of that, if that doesn't stay as the primary core and center of our leadership, then I think it gets perverted and it becomes something really different, something that may be leadership, but I don't know that it's biblical leadership or gospel-centered leadership. And so those are my 2 cents. Live your life before the face of God, openly before them, and in humility. Let them in, give them access to your heart, to your story, because they need it. They need to know it, and you have a great story to let them in on.